this video, we're going to be going over the method I use to recover my fine gold using mercury. Now, before we even start on the video, there's one thing I want to go over, and that's in today's society, they got you convinced that you're going to die if you even look at mercury. The man that taught me how to do this process died in his late 90s. He was 98 or 99, and I really can't remember. But he did this several times a week. This is what he did for a living. And he was sharp right up to the last day. So the mercury in itself, the organic mercury that what we call mercury, the shiny metal, really isn't that dangerous. The body can't absorb it readily. It's when it's in a gaseous form that it becomes really dangerous. And part of this process, there is some parts of it that are dangerous, but there's a few safety precautions, and it's perfectly fine. And so I don't want to get a whole bunch of comments on how dangerous it is and why I shouldn't be doing all this, because to be honest with you, I'm just going to delete them. People have been doing this for a long time, and yes, it does have some risk with it, but if you follow the procedure, you do it correctly, it's fairly safe. With that said, let's get on with the procedure. Now, if you've watched my other videos, you probably know that I do not take the time up in the hills to clean up my gold at all. I bring it all down in the black sand, and to me the time up in the mountains is just too precious. I don't want to spend it cleaning up. And the larger pieces, yes, I separate that, but the fine stuff, it all just goes in a jar. And during the winter, when it's cold and rainy, gives me the opportunity to find some gold. So the material we work with, to begin with, everything's going to be dry. Now the amount of material you do this with can vary quite a bit. Now the material I'm going to run today there's not very much material here. There's maybe a cup or so. I'm not using a lot of material because I want to speed the process up so you get an idea of how to do it, not sit there and watch me spend 20 minutes screening material. So the quantity, everything's the same. It just the quantities can vary. Okay, with all that said, let's look at the equipment now. Okay, these are the tools you're going to need to do this process. You're going to need a tumbler. This one's a vibrating tumbler. I used to have a regular drum one, but I wore it out, and I got a killer deal on this, so I now use a vibrating one. I don't think they're as fast, but they work just as good. You're going to need a small amount of copper. Mercury. Doesn't take much mercury. This is like 1/4 of a pound, and we'll probably only use maybe 1/4 of that. Nitric acid, 70%. This is pretty strong stuff. You want to be careful with this. Coin cleaner. Comet. Any type of a fairly abrasive detergent, spick and span, anything like that. Will work fine. You just want to make sure it's something that doesn't produce suds. Like, you don't want to use dish soap because you'll end up with a heck of a mess. Pair of rubber gloves. Gold pan. Can't do anything without a gold pan. Your black sand. This is a 20 mesh screen, basically window screen size. Have here a crusher. I made this one out of 2 old fence post drivers. Top one, I just cut the handle off. Fits inside the other one. It's got a good solid bottom. Just dump your material in here and just go to town on it. Works great because I bought them at a yard sale. Didn't cost me hardly anything. And when you impact material, since it's down in the tube, it doesn't go flying all over the place. And then your good old panning tub. And that's basically the tools you're going to need. Okay, let's get started on the process. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to screen all our material. So we just take our black sand, dump it into our screen. Once again, we're using a 20 mesh screen. We just want to get all the larger pieces separated from the finer stuff. We'll sift this out. What doesn't go through the screen, we'll dump out here. Make sure we get it all out of there. Now, this is what we got left here. This is going to go into our crusher. We're gonna crush that a little more. This material will go directly into our tumbler. Now this we're going to dump into the crusher, and I'm going to take this outside since I don't want to beat my counter up, and crush it a wee bit. Okay, let's go do that. Okay, we have our material in our crusher here, so all we do just go around, hit it a little bit, move it around a little bit. And that's pretty much about it. All we're wanting to do is break those larger pieces up and the finer ones. Now we'll pull this out, dump it out, and take it in and dump it with the rest of the material. Okay, we got our material here out of the crusher. What we're going to do now is we're just going to pour that into the shifter. Make sure everything goes through the screen. Okay, now what we have left here, I don't know how well this is going to show it, but it's just pretty much flattened out pieces of lead. And what we do, take a good look at that, make sure it is lead, not gold. And it pretty much looks like lead to me, except for that piece right there might be gold. So we're going to throw that in with the other stuff. So this is all just lead, so we're going to put it into our lead pile. Then what we got left here, this will all go into the tumbler. And we're ready for the next part. Okay, we got our material in the tumbler. I got it about half full of water. Now we want to add our cleaning agent. And I do about yay much. It's really not an exact science. You throw the lid on. Make sure you get the lid down good and tight. Otherwise it can get messy, especially if you got a drum tumbler. They're more susceptible to the leaking. Once you get the lid down good and tight, we just fire it up. Now normally when I do this, I'll do this in late afternoon, early evening, and I'll let it run all night. And then next morning I'm ready for the next phase. You want to run it at least 3 to 4 hours. So we're going to fire her up and we'll be back in 3 or 4 hours. Okay, we've been running for a little bit over 4 hours now, so we're gonna shut her down and take a look. And first thing you'll notice is our nice clean water is not so clean. Even though this is sand that we've washed, you can see that the water is pretty dirty. Now this water, being that we're using just a regular household cleaner, this water is perfectly safe to dump down the drain, dump in your yard, whatever. There's no toxic chemicals or anything in it. It's just dirt that's been washed off of the black sand and the gold. So now you don't need to clean this before you put the mercury in it. I do, just because I like to see what's going on. But you can go ahead and add the mercury to this if you want to, and use the same material. Like I said, it's not a big deal. The cleaner doesn't bother the mercury at all. But I like to dump it out and start with clean water. So I'm going to pull this off, dump this dirty water out, and I'll be right back with some clean water. Okay, as you can see, we got this all cleaned up now. Now, a couple things I want to cover is when you're dumping this out, always dump it into your gold pan. or a bowl or anything. Don't dump it directly into the sink. Don't dump it directly into the yard. Always dump it into another container in case you mess up and you pour a little bit of your concentrates out, you won't lose them. The other thing, you got to be extremely careful. Do not put your hands in the water. Right now your gold is clean. It's very susceptible to oil. So if you were to stick your hand in here and swish it around, the oils on your skin could cause your gold to float, and it'll float right out because we have really, really fine gold in here, and it's really clean now. So it's going to be susceptible to that. So, you know, unless you have gloves on, I just say, you know, don't stick your hands in the water. That way you won't lose any gold, and make sure you pour into a catch container. Okay, we're now at the point to where we want to add our mercury. Now normally I just pour my mercury directly in, and I don't know if you can see or not, but there's a little bit of water on top of the mercury. You want to keep water on top of your mercury to keep any evaporation of the fumes out. It's not critical, but it's just a common sense safety practice. So you always keep a little bit of water on top of your mercury. And normally I pour directly into the tank, but I'm going to pour into a small container here to give you an idea. That right there is all the mercury I'm going to use. That's plenty of mercury. If I had this thing completely full, that's still the amount of mercury I'm going to use. You don't need a huge amount of mercury. So we'll just pour that directly into there. And then we're going to put the lid back on our mercury here. Now we'll just close her up. Put the lid on it, seal her up. And your mercury's underwater still, so you're not worried about fumes. Okay, we got her all sealed up again. Now we're just going to let her run for, you know, at least 3 or 4 hours. We'll fire her up, and we'll be back in another 3 to 4 hours. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and shut this down now. Okay, well, I went ahead and let that run all night because it was getting late, and we'd end up having to finish it today anyway. So I figured, well, this way we'll get an early start and it'll get to run a little bit more. So at this point now, what we're going to do is we're going to empty our tub out and take it out and pan it. And the next couple of steps we got to do outside anyway, so I decided it's a nice day today, so I'm going to move everything outside, and we'll get set up and do our panning out there. Okay, we got our tumbler here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pour everything into our cleanup pan. And what we do is you put it over your panning tub, fill her up with water, and just kind of keep everything underwater here. Make sure everything goes in the pan. Okay, got her all cleaned out. Now all we do is we just start to pan this out. Okay, one thing you want to do before you start panning is take and you work your material down to the lower edge of the pan and then pour off all the water. Then you take your pan, turn it over this way, and just tap on a little bit, wiggle it around, and you'll see a ball of mercury that comes out here. You want to get that loose mercury out of there right off the bat. So we'll take our other pan here, we'll just pour that mercury off into that pan. Okay, now this is ready to go. We can just pan this down. We may have to do that one more time before we get it all the way down, but we want to make sure that ball of loose mercury doesn't roll out. Okay, I'll go ahead and pan this on down. Now we'll just keep panning this down, and you want to You don't really have to worry about losing any gold because it should be all gathered up by the mercury. One thing I forgot to mention is anytime you're panning in a tub, put a drop of dish soap in here so you don't have to worry about your material floating out. That dish soap will break up the surface tension. You don't want to put a lot, just one drop is plenty. That way you don't have to worry about anything floating out of your pan. Okay, now we're getting this down to the point we want to check to see if we have another ball of mercury. You can tell because you can see it form in your black sand. Now I'm just going to tap on this, and I don't know if that camera's picking that up, but right there you can see it forming. See right there, it's going to break out, and there's our mercury. Now this is got a lot of gold in it. But we want to get that mercury out of the pan, so we'll just take that, bring it over here, and we just dump it in with the rest of our mercury. And then we just keep panning down. Now we got all the loose mercury out, we can pan this almost all the way down now. Okay. Okay, we're getting this down pretty low now. When you start seeing a lot of your heavies showing up, like there's some mercury right there. So what you do now is you just work this around, and you'll see that ball of mercury right there. See our ball of mercury right here? We just want to get that separated out. Running around, make sure everything's picked up. Then we'll just take this mercury, knock her over by itself, and we'll just put that in the pan with the rest of our mercury. Okay. Okay, now we got this down where we can pan it out real quick. What we're going to do now is we're just going to swirl this around to make sure that we got all that mercury out of there. And I don't see anything but rocks and lead in there. Nope, we're in good shape. Okay, now on to the next step. Okay, now for this step you want your gloves on. And I forgot to say at the beginning of the video, you're going to need a chamois. And the chamois, take it, put it in the water, get it all wet. Make sure it's thoroughly wet. Now, same as before, you always have a safety pan under you. Take your chamois, throw it over your pan, make a little hole in the middle there. You take your mercury and you pour it right there in the center of that pan, center of that chamois. Pull all the corners up. Make sure you got that mercury in the bottom of the bubble there. Now I'm going to put the bigger pan in here so we don't take any chance of losing our mercury. And what you do is just grab this like that, and you want to get it good and tight here before you even start, up towards the top. You want it good and tight. Then you just make sure you're underwater, and you just start squeezing it, and it will squeeze all that mercury out. Now let me get that camera in here a little closer so you can see this. Okay, as you squeeze this out, you can see that mercury coming right out of that chamois. Just keep twisting it and squeezing it. Okay, then what I do is I open it up a little bit. Make sure a little water in there, make sure all the mercury is back down at the bottom. And do it again. Okay, you want to make sure you keep it underwater when you're doing this. And just keep squeezing it till we get all that free gold or free mercury out of there. Okay, I think we got it. Okay, now we have our pan with our loose mercury in it. So we want to put a safety pan underneath as usual. I like to use my little pan here to catch the mercury in, so it's a lot easier to pour back out of it. Pour that mercury into there. Then we take our mercury bottle, just put it right under the water, and pour that mercury right back into our bottle. And just leave the water on top of the mercury. Put the lid back on, and I don't know if you can notice, but that bottle is just about back full again. Okay. Now we can go back to the mercury that's in our chamois. Okay, the mercury that's in here, want to open up our chamois and just turn it over. Spread it out, make sure we get all that mercury out of there. Work a little bit. Make sure we get it all out of there. Look pretty good. Squeeze all the water out of the chamois. Now I'm going to put this back into the little pan so it's easier to handle. And what we have here is our ball of amalgam. This has got all our gold in it. Okay, now to the next step.